Wow, you have chosen the best episode to join me today because as we're wrapping up our first season of Launch It, the Podcast Maestro, today I'm basically giving you a review of the entire season. So sit down, get your hats on, and get your pens ready, and we are going to fly through this. It's going to be like speed coaching, speed coaching for your podcast. So you're going to get a tremendously concentrated amount of really helpful information in a very short time. So stay tuned and don't miss out. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome to Launch It, the Podcast Maestro, your gateway to becoming a thought leader in your field. Dive into the world of elite podcasting and master the art of influence and inspiration. And now, podcast personality, award-winning author and actress, Anne Scottlin.
Hi, and welcome back to Launch It, the Podcast Maestro. I'm your host, Anne Scottlin. And as I just said, you are so lucky to be here today because we are on this crazy crash course to summarize the incredible content we've had here on season 1 of Launch It, the Podcast Maestro. And I'm just going to jump straight in. But before I do, please like and subscribe. Definitely want you keeping track and watching for our updates for the first episode of season 2. So be sure you have us saved in your notifications. All right, so let's just jump in. What is some of the best and most important information you can get about having a podcast, especially if you're new to podcasting and you're doing it for the first time? Whether you're doing it 100% alone or whether you're using someone to help you, like myself, who manages and produces and designs everything for you. Either way, it's really important that you have an awareness of what is going to make your show a success. First of all, one of our earliest episodes this season was the art of storytelling, and I really just went over the importance of storytelling. If you're a writer, a creative, if you are a speaker or a documentarian, if you write articles, you know how very important storytelling is. And that is just as important in podcasting, whether that's audio or video podcasting, to really create those emotional connections and memorable content. Because storytelling is really key to engaging your audience and making your podcast world-class. That is part of it. It's the ease, it's the entertainment, it's the warm fuzzy of just sitting down in a comfortable place and being entertained while you're learning, which is, I think, the best. Some people call it entertainment. Wait, no, that's not right. Edutainment. Thank you very much. Edutainment, but I don't like that word at all. I think stories is much better. So your emotional content, the stories, it really increases retention. It increases long-term memory and formation in your listeners. If they are not forming a memory around the story, they're not going to connect it to the information you've shared. So it really does help. I just had someone yesterday quote me a story from a broadcast they heard 4 years ago, and they've never re-listened to it, but they still remember the story, and they remember which broadcast that was. So see how important that is. And vulnerability and personal storytelling is even more important. If you can make your stories personal, if they are real life experiences from you or your guest, it really helps build deeper connections with your audience. All right, you ready? Another one of our top episodes was To See or Not to See, the great podcast debate. Should you do audio or video podcasting? And how do you choose the format that suits your audience and content? Well, it's so important to understand your audience's preferences. That is critical to your podcasting success. So wherever your audience already is, whoever that target is, you need to really understand them inside and out. Don't figure it out after you put all the time and effort into a show. You might be doing it backwards. If you really want to be successful, do it on the front end. So audio or video, audio podcasts are so convenient because they're portable and you can listen to it anywhere. You don't have to see it to understand or get all of the information and great stories. But video podcasts do offer more engagement and connection. I love video podcasting because I feel like I get to connect more personally with the viewers. And for those who aren't watching, they can still listen. So it's the best of both worlds. There's a lot of people who are like, I am not getting dressed for a video. I am not worrying about all the other elements of video podcasting. It's just not my thing. That is totally fine. But just know, in such a visually intense society that we currently find ourselves in, where screens are constantly in front of us, if it's your screen versus someone else's screen, if they're watching you versus another show, what might catch their attention. And if you have a great personality, if you're interesting, if you are silly, if you like interviewing guests and shooting the breeze and just bringing the energy of the room to the screen, then do it, because people will really appreciate that. And the joggers can still listen. All right. I'm not going to dwell on this next one because it's so good. You really just have to go back and watch it. It's Audio Mic 101, Finding Your Perfect Podcast Voice. And again, you can find all these episodes and many, many more that I've done on my website, which is annescottlin.com. If you're listening, that's ANNESCOTTLIN, of course, annescottlin.com. You can go to the show tab and look up all of these. And you're definitely going to want to listen to the one about picking the perfect mic. It's fun, it's chock full of information and great resources. But just in a teeny tiny summary, I go over the importance of sound quality and how the right microphone really makes a difference for your podcast success, and how different microphone types also are critical based on your setup. Are they overhead? Are they lavalier? Are they desktop? What are they? You need to know what they are and what's going to work best for you. And I also give you recommendations and resources for various microphones for various budget ranges, including and performance. So check out that episode. It's impossible to recap that for you here. Another great popular episode we had was Theme Genius, How to Craft Your Theme. And what that was really about was choosing a specific niche for your podcast theme to attract target audience. Because a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of new podcasters, people who want to start a podcast or are starting a new podcast, they're like, I'm really good at this, or I like this, or I like talking about that. But it's not necessarily enough. You need to ensure that, first of all, your theme attracts a targeted audience. The more targeted and specific, the better. It's much better to be the expert in your field of 10,000 listeners and followers than it is to be one in a haystack of people who are doing the same kind of content. And even if you have more followers, they probably are not going to be quality. You're not going to have a high engagement rate. So if you're the king or queen of your niche subject, you are still ahead of the game and more likely to be able to convert those listeners and viewers to paying clients. So ensure that your theme really aligns with your passion. Make sure it aligns with your expertise. And research your audience. I already talked about that, but really find out their interests and refine your podcast theme. Don't just say, I'll see who listens and then figured it out. There is a part of this program where we teach testing, we teach A/B testing and other elements to help you refine your niche or your target audience, but at least do a lot of research on the front end. Otherwise, you can spend weeks, months, years, and a lot of time and money climbing up the wrong pole, and it's no point. You might as well really figure out who desperately needs and wants your content instead of just throwing the mud at the wall, right? See what sticks. So there is a better way. Yes, another really good one. Guests can make your podcast flop, or it can really make you the newest, greatest, amazing phenomenon. Why is that? Because some of the good things about guests, they bring fresh insights and they expand your network. That is huge, but bear in mind, only if their network aligns with what your niche and theme and brand is. I don't care if they have 1 million followers, if you might pick up a few from their wide network, but if they're a totally different area of expertise than your show is meant to be, even if you get a surge of listens and follows in that episode, which isn't a bad thing, just know that it's probably going to go right back down almost to what it was before. So make sure that their area of expertise, their network is very closely aligned with the one that you're trying to build. If it's very closely aligned, this can be miraculous for you. Increase your engagement, increase your followers. And guests really, they make the production itself easier to a certain extent. For most people, just having someone to talk to makes the recording process smoother and more dynamic than, unless you're really experienced at just talking to cameras and screens, which I am. Otherwise, a lot of people are like, I can't stand it. I literally just feel like I'm talking to myself. It's not working for me. That's why so many podcasts, video or audio, do have guests. However, make a note, ding, ding, ding. There are challenges with your guests too, like scheduling. That is one of my biggest headaches ever. I've had many shows that have no guests. I've had many shows with guests, different shows, different genres, and guests The preparation is much harder because you worry about them showing up. You worry about them making the proper time conversions if they're in different parts of the country, different parts of the world, because I interview people from all over the world. And also their tech requirements, whether their internet lines are, if their connection is stable and high enough to support video in particular, but audio as well. So many things. So coordinating with guests can be tricky, especially high profile ones. You don't want to miss a high profile guest because they did the math wrong and showed up at the wrong time. And another thing, last thing about guests here, one of the downsides is also loss of control. They can really derail your conversation. They can derail your entire agenda for a particular episode, or they can just be very negative. They can have a negative impact. Perhaps if you haven't pre-screened them, they don't have a great presentation style or voice or something that will appeal to your audience. Speed of speech is a huge one. I was just talking to someone about that the other day, and we were trying to decide how to help a mutual friend of ours who does podcasts, but she speaks very slowly, even though it's with great intention. Cannot stand watching, love her dearly. How do we help her? Well, you tell her to just come over and chat with me. I'll help her speed it up, and it won't be hard, I promise. Okay, right before we go to break, I'm going to talk about one more, which is leveraging social media to position your podcast. We've talked about this several times during this season 1, and there's so much to this, which is also why I put social media into the package services that I offer people when I produce their shows, pre-produce, produce, post-produce, and distribute and market on social media, because it is a massive part of making your podcast successful. Unless you're already a standalone celebrity, you need to really utilize social media. It's really essential to effectively establish your authority in your field and to grow, of course, to grow your audience. So first of all, when it comes to your social media, be sure you set really clear goals, like define the specific purpose or person, define the specific purpose of your podcast's social media presence. So it aligns with your objectives, whether it's what is it that you want from social media? Let's put it that way. Do you want to increase listeners, or do you want to boost engagement? Or do you have a specific financial number that you're trying to achieve by selling merch? What is the bottom line? What is your specific goal for, say, this quarter in your use of your social media? So be sure you're really clear on that, because if you're just aiming for a little bit of everything and just being sort of good at all of it, it's not great, trust me. Also, platform-specific content. So be sure that when you're whatever platforms you're posting on, from the plethora of platforms you have to post on from, I won't even go into how many audio platforms, as well as video platforms, as well as all the social media platforms. Tailor your content to fit those specific platforms based on what your target audience's behavior and preferences is. If you're going to extraordinary lengths and putting out a ton of time and money to be on 100 different kinds of channels or platforms, but your real target audience is only on 2 of those, then why are you going to all that trouble? So again, find out where they are. See who your competitors are. This is the number one thing that I think most podcasters forget, unless they have been in show business for a very long time. But especially when they're talking about podcasting and social media, who is the competition? You've got to go check it out. It will give you 90% of the information you need to know to compete and stand out and excel in content and excel in quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's basically like your own training course by finding out who your top 5 competitors are. If you don't know who your top 5 competitors are, then you really don't have business having your own podcast yet until you figure that out, because otherwise your brand doesn't have a unique voice and you don't even know what your unique voice is. Now, words of hope, you do develop your voice more as you go along, but still do the research beforehand. It takes relatively little effort and you get a huge payoff. All right, we are going to stop and take a quick break. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please follow, like, subscribe, pop over to my website, shoot me an email. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about your podcast experiences. or what you're looking for, or what content you would like to see in a season 2. So check that out. Go to annescottlin.com and like and subscribe here. We'll be right back.
Picture this. You have worked your whole life to become an expert, a leader, a change maker, but you're so busy, most people will never discover you to recognize your work. Anne Scottlin, founder of Podcast Maestro, understands this challenge. With a decade of Hollywood experience and a proven track record as a business coach, Anne turns seasoned professionals into thought leaders through the art of podcasting. Podcast Maestro offers plug-and-play services, handling everything from pre-production to distribution, so you can focus on your message while Anne and her team manage the rest. Leverage Anne's Hollywood production knowledge, strategic business insight, and social media expertise to amplify your reach and impact. If you're ready to elevate your voice, connect with Anne Scottlin at Podcast Maestro and begin your podcast journey today.
Welcome back to Launch the Podcast Maestro, what I'm calling your speed coaching episode, which is wrapping up our season 1, which is a fabulous time for you to be watching and listening right now with me, because you're getting concentrated review information from the whole season, some of the best content that I've been bringing you. So we just talked a lot about engagement strategies and social media, and we've talked a bit about your brand by default in touching on these other subtopics. But let's just talk for a moment more about how do you really create that legendary brand? Remember, your podcast is your brand. It also needs to align with any other branding you have. So do a quick review before you start your podcast, or if you're reviewing after a first year of podcasting, go over your mission and values. Really define them. What is the mission and values? Not your personal ones, not your business ones, but the ones for your podcast. And then does that align with any other brands or businesses that you currently have? You need to really guide the purpose and direction of your show and really make it distinctly clear how your brand is different from someone else. If you don't have brand identity, you're going to lose listeners fast. So know your target audience. We already talked about that. I'm not going to go into that again. The branding elements, it seems like a no-brainer, but sometimes when people do a podcast, like, I'm going to do it, it's going to be fun. And they kind of realize that you can create so many different things in your life or your branding, depending on what your area of expertise is. They may not align, which means all that energy is going in 10 different directions, where what I'm guessing is, for the most part, you want your energy to be coming in order to increase income in a cohesive and predictable way. So your branding is really important, just like any other business. Even if your podcast is just a division of your brand, you still need to be aligned with your brand. You need to have consistent branding elements like your logos, your colors, your fonts. Can you see my logos, my colors, my fonts? I'm just saying, it's a very small example, but it does make a difference. It really does. And it sets you apart, and people find you recognizable when they run into your work, or when they run into your content, when they run into your thumbnails, your advertising, all of it. So really do that. Really take the time to figure out what aligns with you, with the rest of your brand. Okay, that said, another really popular episode is about analytics. I'm going to jump into this. And the question of that show was, are analytics worth your time? Like, what are the importance of analytics? Because sometimes as soon as I say the word analytics, people just like either glaze over, or like a little tear starts coming out because they're like, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do it. I don't know, I can't do it. All right. So for all you really analytical techie people out there, that's not you. But a lot of creatives and artists, they're like, no, I'm crying for help. Okay. Analytics are really critical for podcasters. Just bear with me, especially those of you who are aiming to grow and monetize. If you're a super casual podcaster, if you do this literally for fun, you don't really care how many listeners or viewers you have, you're not really trying to monetize, you don't really need to worry about it. I think it's a throwaway. It's a waste to not pay attention, because you can at least maximize your impact. But it's not critical for everyone. However, if you're really aiming to grow and monetize, if you're trying to create exposure for your brand through your podcast to, say, also help market the book you have coming out, or also help market some other new product or service you have, then again, analytics really do matter. So first of all, key podcast metrics. This is important. Metrics are like how number of downloads per episode? What are your retention rates? And what is the geographic data that you can find out to help you optimize your content and attract sponsors or content. When I speak too fast, this just happens. My tongue goes faster than my brain. But for example, if you start realizing that most of your viewers are from a particular region of the country, you can attract local and regional sponsors instead of just global or national sponsors. So pay attention to who is most likely to start paying you money. Because if you're one of those people who is trying to monetize, these are really important things to know. Recommended tools. I gave a whole bunch of different tools in that episode. Again, go ahead and look it up on my website. It's called Are Analytics Worth Your Time? And the tools that I recommended included things like PodTrack, Google Analytics, Chartable, Buzzsprout, so many more that can really help you track your listener data, your platform performance, and really help grow your audience engagement. So go check that out. And last but not least, you need analytics for your new versus returning listeners. Oh, why? Because monitoring the balance between your new listeners or viewers and your returning listeners or viewers is really crucial for growth and retention. It's really going to help you tailor your strategies to expand your audience. So if you are retaining audience, if you're retaining listeners and viewers in a particular sub niche, then you might say, let's put more of our advertising dollars into a different sub niche and see how they respond. Because this one is coming in naturally. I think everyone from this group of young professionals or single moms or whatever it is, this group of people, they already have heard about me, know about me, whatever that is. Who else would really be wanting to turn in, and where can I market and promote on social media to target that? Should I be promoting on X or should I be promoting on Instagram? Sometimes the answer is both, but not often, because they tend to have very different audiences who are tuning into those platforms for different reasons. So once again, understand your metrics and you will really find a lot of tricks for retention, for growth, and for helping tailor your strategies to expand your audience. Okay, we're near the end. I have a little bit more for you though. Evergreen podcasting. I think most of you know what that is, but just in case you don't, it means work less and play more. That's what it is. In fact, that's the name of the episode I shared with you. Evergreen podcasting, work less, play more. Basically, quit reinvest every single broadcast even. Evergreen content, and the definition of that is important. Evergreen content is timeless and remains relevant. And in today's crazy fast-paced world, timeless could even mean a year, okay? But if it can be 10 years or 20 years, then that's even mind-blowing. Let's at least say, for sake of argument, because I know people are already thinking, well, but what about a year? So evergreen content is timeless and remains relevant, let's say generally over the course of the year, the following year, since you first put that content up. And it's helping to continually attract new listeners and build long-term podcast success. And what evergreen means is not having too many elements that are time-bound or seasonally bound. That's one simple way to put it. For example, it doesn't work for every show. If you do a show that's just on news or entertainment, this is really never, ever going to be evergreen for you. It's not the nature of your show, which actually makes a lot more work for you, but it's also a very popular genre. So that's when you come out even. However, if your show is content like mine, which is how to have a podcast or how to do anything, you can make that very timeless and relevant, as long as every now and then you keep updating tech information, equipment updates, things like that. Teaching you the basics of podcasting remains useful. However, listeners get a little bored if I start talking about something that happened in the news this week that was huge, and they're listening 6 months from now. Or if I talk about the season we're in, or a holiday that just happened or that is approaching, they're like, oh, this is an old episode. But if you keep it really general, like I have an amazing season going on in my outdoor world right now. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Because if I do, the people on the other side of the year will be like, oh, this is old, right? So what are the benefits of evergreen content? Well, it's kind of obvious. It boosts your discoverability, your audience growth, your long-term authority, which is what I, as the podcast maestro, am always trying to do for my clients, which is really make you an authority in your field by having a world-class podcast. And in order to do that, a lot of the things we focus on is evergreen content. And we also want to keep it evergreen because it offers you more ongoing monetization opportunities. You're not going to have advertisers who want to advertise for a holiday when you're listening to it 6 months later. But let's say you rerun the episode, you could still offer to rerun it for those same sponsors, and you don't even have to get new ads. Nothing has to change. So just bear that in mind. If you have more questions, talk to me. I could go on, and we got to wrap up. But the key strategies for really creating your evergreen content is focus on timeless topics and avoid trends. Create comprehensive, in-depth content, and use SEO for longevity, because it's going to be so important that people can find your content. Promotion and repurposing is also really relevant. You want to make sure that you consistently re-promote older episodes, that you update content, that you cross-promote to maintain relevance and maximize reach. And that's why that episode, I always say, is work less, play more. Because instead of reinventing the wheel for every single week and every single episode and every single social media post, I'm exhausted just saying all that, you want to keep reusing things as much as you can, as long as they're relevant and as long as they are evergreen topics. All right, there's one last episode, because I couldn't possibly go over them all in this short time, but I want you to check out because it was one of the most fun episodes of the entire season, but there's no way for me to summarize it here, and it's called Podcasting Parables. Lessons from the Land of Audio. So I just had a whole bunch of fun, basically making up fable stories for podcasting. And if you just want to be entertained and have fun, go over there, go to my website, www.annescottlin.com, SCOTTLIN, and you can search under the show tab for Podcasting Parables, Lessons from the Land of Audio. It has been such a pleasure to have all of you here with me over this season 1. It's been absolutely exciting and wonderful. I've appreciated so much all of your likes, your follows, your feedback, your questions. And just because we're at the end of season 1 doesn't mean you cannot reach out to me. Please do anytime. My email is right there on my website. It's contact@annescottlin.com. Reach out to me and I'll shoot you a message back. If you have questions specifically about podcasting or the services I offer, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. And stay tuned. As I said before, make sure your notifications are turned on so you are the first to know when our next episode is for the beginning of season 2. Thank you, as always, for spending time with me, the Podcast Maestro. I'm Anne Scottlin, and happy podcasting. See you next time.